Welcome back to Edureka. In this video, we are going to learn about C++ interview questions. Whether you are preparing for job interview or want to brush up your C++ skills, this video has got you ready. We will explore a range of questions that will cover important concepts in C++. Let's begin with the questions. Before that, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on latest tech content by Edureka. Also visit the Edureka website for training and certification courses. Let us now enter the arena of C++ interview questions. We will begin with the beginner interview questions, followed by intermediate questions, and finally advanced questions. Before that, why to learn C++ language? C++ is a popular high-level object-oriented programming language used for large applications such as software development, game development, and operating system programming. It enables developers to create efficient, reusable code for various applications, which includes games and web development. Let's begin with the questions. The first question is, what is C++? C++ is an object-oriented programming language that is invented by Jarne Strostrup in 1985. C++ is a superset of C with a major addition of classes in C language. And the main point is, C++ is a versatile programming language combining procedural and then object-oriented and also generic features used in various domains like software, game development, embedded system, and high-level applications as well. And the next question is, what is the difference between C and C++? C language was developed by Dennis Ritchie, whereas C++ language was developed by Jarne Strostrup. C is a procedure-oriented programming language, whereas C++ is an object-oriented programming language. C is a subset of C++, whereas C++ is a subset of C. And the next point is, C language follows top-down approach, whereas C++ language follows bottom-up approach. Then, C language has 32 keywords, whereas C++ language contains 52 keywords. Following this, next question is, what are the advantages of C++? The first advantage we can see is object-oriented programming. C++ is an object-oriented programming language focusing on objects and making code manipulation easier than a procedural language. Next, memory management. This language provides developers with a total control over memory management and achieved through the dynamic memory allocations using pointers like malloc and calloc. And the next advantage is compilation speed. C++ is preferred choice for speed due to its faster compilation and execution time. And the next one is library support. C++ language supports standard template library that offers numerous functions for efficient code writing, including support for containers like hash tables, maps, and sets. And then we have multi-paradigm programming. C++ program utilizes multi-paradigm programming, which involves planning, logic, structure, and procedure. The next question is, what are the different data types present in C++? Basically, we have three main kinds of data types. They are primitive data type, derived, and user-defined data type. In primitive, we have integer, character, boolean, floating point, double floating point, and then void. Whereas in derived data type, we have function, array, pointer, and then references. And then user-defined data types are class, structure, union, enum, and type defined. And the next question is, what are classes and objects in C++? Classes is a user-defined data types, which includes data members and member functions. Member functions are the functions that are used to carry out operations on data variables, which are known as data members. And then, objects is an instance of class. An object can also be referred to as a variable of a class because a class is a user-defined data type. And the next question is, what is hash include IOStream and using namespace standard? Hash include IOStream is a preprocessor directive used in C++ language to include input or output functions. And then, using namespace standard is a declaration that allows you to use names from standard namespace without explicitly specifying them, resulting in more compact code. Next question is, what is difference between structure and class? Members of a structure are public by default, whereas members of a class are private by default. Structure can have a constructors, but they can't be invoked automatically, whereas class can have a constructor and they can be invoked automatically. Structure has a limited option or a no support for inheritance, whereas for class supports inheritance for a code reuse and hierarchy. In structure, memory allocation is often on the stack, whereas in class, memory allocation is often on the heap. And the next question is, what do you mean by call by value and call by reference? Call by value passes the copies of actual parameters to the function's formal parameters, which consumes more memory as it involves duplicating data. When it comes to call by reference, this will passes the address of actual parameters to the function's formal parameters, where it is a memory efficient as it avoids the duplicating of data. Following this question, we have, what is the difference between reference and pointer? A reference value can't be changed, whereas pointer value can be changed. References requires an existing value to become an alias of, so it can never contain a null value, whereas pointer is also known as null pointer and it can hold or point at a null value. References can't work with arrays, whereas pointers can work with arrays. In references, to access the members of a class or a structure, it uses a dot operator, whereas in a pointer, to access the members of a class or structure, it uses an arrow operator. And the last difference is, in reference, it is simple to access or use memory location of a reference directly, whereas in pointer, memory location can't be readily accessed. Instead, a dereference must be used. Next question is, define token in C++. A token is the smallest unit of program that the compiler recognizes in C++. We can define token as, tokens are the building blocks of program and can be categorized into several types. Here are some common types of tokens in C++. First one is keyword, identifier, literals, operators, special symbols, and then constants. And the next question is, what are access modifiers? Access modifiers are keywords that are used to control the access level of class members. They define how members of a class can be accessed from outside the class. C++ supports three types of access modifiers. They are public, private, and protected. Following this, we have question as, can you compile a program without a main function? Yes, it is possible to compile a program without including main function by using macros. For example, this is the code we can run. Here you can see hash define function main. This is nothing but a using macros. If you run this code snippet, we will get the output as Edureka. And the next question is, difference between equal to and assignment operator. The equal to operator is a comparison operator used to test whether the two values are equal or not. If the values on a left and right sides are equal, it returns true value, otherwise it will return false value. And the next, assignment operator. This operator is used to assign a value on a right and stores it in a variable on a left. And the next question is, what are the various OOPS concepts in C++? We mainly have 6 types, and they are class, object, inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and then encapsulation. And the next question is, explain this pointer. This pointer is a keyword that represents a pointer to a current instance of a class. This pointer is used to distinguish between local and class members when they share a same name. This helps in maintaining a reference to an object on which a member function is invoked. Now we will get into the intermediate level of questions. And the first question is, What is polymorphism in C++ and mention its types. Polymorphism, in simple words we can say, having several forms. Its behavior varies depending on the scenario. This happens when we have multiple classes that are related to each other by inheritance. There are two types of polymorphism. First one is a compile time polymorphism and second one runtime polymorphism. And the next question is, what is the difference between an array and a linked list? The first difference is, arrays have a fixed size, whereas linked lists have a dynamic in size. And the next one is, arrays are stored in contiguous memory locations, whereas linked lists are non-contiguous memory locations. In arrays, insertion and deletions may involve shifting of elements, whereas in linked list, there is no need for shifting of elements for insertion and deletion. And the next point is, arrays are primitive data structures, whereas linked lists are dynamic data structures. And the last point is, in arrays, memory is allocated at a compile time, whereas in linked list, memory is allocated at a runtime. And the next question is, what is the difference between function overloading and operator overloading? Function overloading is also known as method overloading, which allows us to define multiple methods with the same name, but with a different parameter list in the same scope. Then, operator overloading enables the operator to extend their predefined operational meaning based on their operands, data types, or classes. Following this, we have another question, that is, what is the difference between while loop and do-while loop? First, we'll see for do-while loop. So, this will check the condition after the execution of a loop body. This body loop is guaranteed to execute at least once, regardless of any initial conditions. And one more point, if the condition in a do-while loop is false, the body will execute at least once. I hope you understand this one. Let's see for the syntax. So first, you can see that do with the braces of statements and then you have a condition. So when we execute the code, it will execute all the statements within that scope. After that, it will check for the conditions. So that absolutely, it will at least execute for once. Now we will see for while loop. While loop checks the condition before the execution of a loop body. If the condition is initially false, then loop may not execute at all. In other words, we can say as, if the condition in a while loop is false, then no statements will execute within the loop. Let's check for the syntax. We can see that while in braces condition and below that statements we have. So in the beginning of the code only, it will check for the condition. If that's satisfied, then only it will execute for the statements. And the next question is, define namespaces in C++. The namespace keyword is used to declare the namespace, followed by the name of a namespace. And then within the namespace block, entities like variables, functions or classes and so on are specified. Elements inside the namespaces are accessed using a scope resolution operator. And the last point is, namespaces helps in preventing naming conflicts by encapsulating entities within a specific scope. And the next question is, explain constructor in C++ with example. A constructor is a specific member function of a class that is called automatically when an object of a class is created. Constructor have the same name as a class name and no return type including void. Next is the example. You can see the example here. Here we have used class name as a simple class and also a constructor name as a simple class. So when we execute this one, it will call a constructor by itself when an object is created. And the next question is, what are destructors in C++? A destructor is a specific member function that has the same name as a class but begins with a tilde. It is invoked automatically when an item is removed from scope or manually erased. And then the destructor is used for housekeeping operations including releasing reserved sources. Following this, we have another question is, discuss the differences between prefix and postfix. In prefix, the operator is placed before the operand, whereas in postfix, the operator is placed after the operand. In prefix, the operand is modified before its value is used or returned, whereas in postfix, the current value of an operand is used or returned before it is modified. And the next point is, in prefix, we write operator as plus plus x, whereas in postfix, we can write operator as x plus plus. And the final point is, in prefix, it returns the modified value of an operand, whereas in postfix, it returns the original value of an operand before modification. And the next question is, compare compile time polymorphism and runtime polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism occurs during compilation phase, whereas runtime polymorphism occurs during program execution. In compile time polymorphism, the binding of a functions is determined at a compile time only, whereas in runtime polymorphism, the binding of functions is determined at a runtime. And the last point, compile time polymorphism is more efficient than runtime polymorphism, as there is no runtime overhead, whereas runtime polymorphism is less efficient than compile time polymorphism. And the next question is, what is the difference between new and malloc? New is an operator, whereas malloc is a library function. And the second difference, new allocates a memory and calls a constructor for object initialization, whereas malloc allocates a memory and does not call a constructor. And the next difference is, return type of new is exact data type, whereas in malloc it returns void. And the final difference is, new is faster than malloc because an operator is always faster than a function. And the next question is, define friend function. A friend function is a function that is not a member of a class but has access to its private and protected members. This enables a friend functions to act on class's private or protected members as if it were a member function. And then, friend functions are often used when a function needs access to class internals but doesn't logically belongs to the class itself. Next question is, what do you know about friend class and friend function? A friend class is a class that can access both the protected and private variables of a classes, where it is declared as a friend. And then, friend function. A friend function is a function that accesses private and protected members of a class, operating as if it were a member function. They are commonly used when a function needs access to the class internals but doesn't belong to the class itself. Next question is, what is function overriding? We'll explain this with an example. If you inherit a class into a derived class and provide a definition for one of the base class's function, again inside a derived class, then this function is called as overridden function, and this mechanism is known as function overriding. And the next question is, define inline function. Can we have a recursion inline function in C++? An inline function is a request to compiler that inlines a function to a main function body. It can become an overhead if an execution time is less than the switching time from caller function to called function. For example, to make a function inline, use keyword inline before and then define it before it calls. An inline function can't be recursive as it does not maintain a piece of information on the stack necessary for recursion. Now, we will explore the advanced level of questions. The first question is, what is a virtual function? A virtual function is a member function in the base class that was redefined in a derived class. Here, virtual function uses a virtual as a keyword to declare it. And then, it guarantees that the right function for an objective is called, despite the kind of reference or a pointer used for function call. Virtual functions are mostly utilized for polymorphism at a runtime as well. The next question is, what is the difference between virtual functions and pure virtual functions? The first difference is, virtual functions can have a default implementation of a code, whereas pure virtual functions can't have a default implementation of a code. Virtual functions used for running runtime polymorphism, whereas pure virtual functions used in the advanced concept of runtime polymorphism where interfaces are required. In virtual function, definition of a function is provided in the parent class itself. In pure virtual function, Definition of a function is not provided in a parental class. In virtual function, there is no abstract class concepts. Whereas in pure virtual function, the class is called an abstract class if there is at least one pure virtual function. The next question is, what is a virtual destructor? We'll understand with a scenario. When destroying a derived class object or an instance using base class pointer object, a virtual destructor is invoked to free up a memory space. So this ensures that derived class destructor is called first, followed by the base class destructor. This prevents the memory leak. And the next question is, what is a scope resolution operator? The scope resolution operator is used to differentiate between local and global entities when defining the scope of variables or a function. The main purpose of using scope resolution is, first one, to provide access to members with a certain namespaces, class or global context. And another purpose of using scope resolution is, it is also used to define functions outside the class definitions. Following this, we have another question, that is, how delete function is different from delete. Deallocating storage, which is allotted by dynamic memory allocation, is done by using both delete and delete function. Here, delete function is used to deallocate a storage of an array, whereas delete is used to deallocate the storage of a single object. To prevent memory leaks, make sure to use deallocate memory using delete keyword after allocating it with a new keyword. Whereas, if you use new function keyword to allocate an array of an memory, and to delete that one, you have to use delete function keyword to deallocate memory. And the next question is, what is an abstraction in C++ and when to use? Abstraction is a fundamental concept in object-oriented programming language. It is a method of keeping unnecessary data hidden and giving a user only the information that they needed. This facilitates understanding the usage of code. Following this, we have question as, is constructor overloading possible? If yes, then explain, and if no, then why? Yes, it is not possible to overload a destructor. The destructor is just one method for destroying a constructor created by object. As a result, destructor can't be overloaded. Destructor neither requires any argument nor returns any value. And the next question is, what do you understand about static members and static member functions? Static members are class components that are shared by all instances. They exist independently of object instantiation when declared with the static keyword, and also allowing for class-wide properties or constants. Static members, which can be accessed by the class name, and also are useful in the situation when common data is required across all objects in the class. When it comes to static functions, a static member function can be called even if no class objects exist. It is accessed using only the class name and also with the scope resolution operator. And the next question is, what is an overflow error? Overflow errors occurs when a computational results in a value exceeds the data type's representational limits and also causing a loss of precision. This is common in numeric data types like integers and also leading to unexpected behavior or data corruptions. To prevent these overflow errors, data types must accommodate a range of values which is generated during computations. For example, let's assume that data variable size is -10 to +10. So on that point of time, if you declare a variable size as 22 or 33, that leads to an overflow error. Here you can see the actual data type, integer data type value range. And the last question is, what does the scope resolution operator do? The scope resolution operator is used to access members of class or namespaces that are declared outside their normal scope. For example, it can be used to access static members, global variables, or functions specified outside the class or a namespace. With this, we have come to end of this session. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and keep learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!